Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
Hey everybody, it's Jared. Welcome to another episode of All Things Crime. Man, can't tell you how much we appreciate all of you that are watching on YouTube or Rumble or listening to us on a podcast, whatever platform you prefer. We appreciate you. Hope that you've subscribed, and please share this message because we've got a fantastic guest today. His name's Brad Schleppi, and I pronounced that right? Brad?
Yes, sir. Brad Schleppi.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, man. I was shooting from the hip on that one, but Brad Schleppi, awesome guy, and he works for a company called Season of Justice, and we're going to get into the details of that. But Season of Justice is one of those that it's kind of on the outside, helping fund the inside, and it's so critical. It's like 501c3 companies. The latest interviews with Paul Hutchinson from Sound of Freedom. He has these different organizations that he belongs to, and he's out helping catch bad guys and child traffickers. Well, Brad is kind of Brad's not going undercover, but he's one of the faces of Season of Justice, and overall great guy. And he's from Indiana, so what can go wrong, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're a Hoosier guy, right?
I am a born Hoosier and a graduate as well. So.
Oh man, there you go.
Yep.
Just full on there.
Yeah. Full throttle. Yep.
Right on. Well, listen, Brad, welcome to the show, and
thank you.
Appreciate you coming on. So first of all, give us a little background on you and how you came to be with Season of Justice, and then definitely go into kind of what Season of Justice is, what their goal is. I mean, you can go to their website, and man, I thought I saw something, and it was just awesome that you guys have funded over $1 million worth of testing and different, funding for, whatever the police agency needs. So yeah, rock on with us that.
Yeah. Excellent. No, Jared, I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Obviously, Brad Schleppi, I'm with Season of Justice. I'm the executive director here. I've been with Season of Justice for just a little less than a year now. I come to this position with Season of Justice with more than 22 years of nonprofit management experience under my belt, with a degree in criminal justice and sociology from Indiana University that we just talked about, as well as extensive studies in and at the Lilly School of Philanthropy here in Indianapolis. Season of Justice, Jared, as you know, but for your listeners, was founded just a little more than 3 years ago with the specific intent to help bridge the funding gap faced by so many law enforcement agencies that are out there, investigative agencies that are out there, to help them access cutting edge forensic science. One of the things that a lot of us know and that Season of Justice is here to do is to really come alongside those investigative agencies and work with them specifically to help them not only access, but ensure that they are, pairing good forensic science, cutting edge forensic science, with the needs that they have when investigating and continuing to investigate cold cases. So many of our cases are 25, 35, 50 years old, and the technology that was available in 1971 is a lot different than the technology that's available in 2022. And because of a lot of really good efforts by investigators and crime scene technicians, there's evidence that's been stored away for a very, very long time that can now be taken out of cold storage, for a lack of a better term, and tested. And Season of Justice is not only helping to fund that, but we're, seeing the results of that cutting edge forensic science in the number of solves that we see all across the country. We fund investigative agencies, coast to coast in all 50 states. We've even focused some funding up in Canada as well to help them with some stuff. And so, like I said, we've been around as a 501c3 organization for a little more than 3 years. We are honored to have grant funded more than $1 million to more than 150 cases to date. And our intention, our expectation, the expectation of our funders is that we continue to grow those numbers.
Oh, that's just amazing.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, folks, right off the top, if you want to help, and I know there's so many of us out there that when we hear about these different cases, especially the cold cases, kids being murdered, whatever, and then there's a specific case that I know Brad is going to be talking to us about. But when we hear these stories, number one, we're all horrified about it. And number two, I think the first thing is what can we do to help? And I'll tell you right now, one of the best ways you can help is go to Season of Justice, their website. Is it seasonofjustice.org?
It is. Seasonofjustice.org.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Seasonofjustice.org. Go there, contribute, do what you can, spread the message, share this podcast. And I think the more this word gets out, and when they hear about the fantastic work that you guys are doing, helping especially the agencies that can't afford it,
Right.
Say you're out in the woods somewhere, I shouldn't say the woods, but even the suburbs, a lot of the smaller jurisdictions that are in the suburbs of big cities may not have the type of funding that the bigger cities do. But you still have a lot of that bleed over. This is one of the problems that's really starting to happen a lot in the United States. You'll take a big city, Indianapolis is a good example, and then you have all of these smaller counties and cities that are maybe 30, 40, 50, 60 miles out. But even that far, a lot of the gang violence and things like that is starting to spill over into those. And there's agencies that are really putting up a fight, and they're working really hard, but a lot of them are undermanned. A lot of them can't afford the equipment. I mean, they're doing everything they can just to fill the ranks, with the police forces, and not having the like you said, the latest and greatest in technology, and whether that be ballistics or anything else. But I mean, for me, obviously near and dear to my heart is DNA. So right. And specifically MVAC testing. But you know what? I know you guys. I think personally the best thing about you guys is that you can go to agencies, or agencies will come to you, and they'll tell you what they need.
Exactly. That's one of the principles of our grant making process, is that the investigative agency comes to us, specifically, with that completed grant application after talking with a lab specifically about the needs of their case, the needs that the investigators have with respect to where they think the advanced technology from today could help them move this case forward. And as an organization, Season of Justice, we're not interested in getting in the middle of that at all. That relationship is between the investigator and the lab. Season of Justice is really here to be that financial bridge, between access to that cutting edge, technology and, if I may, underfunded, law enforcement. We know that they're not overfunded by any stretch of the imagination. And we know that cold case investigation does not always get, first priority in terms of, funding. And so that's really where that's the niche that Season of Justice is here. That's why we were funded, why we were founded, was to help those types of situations, ultimately helping families find resolution. That's a piece we haven't spoken about yet. I know we will. But yes, we support law enforcement. We help fund law enforcement, but ultimately we're looking to find resolution for families. We know that we can't always bring closure through solves or through DNA science, but we can help find resolution. And there are way too many families out there that just don't have any answers. And we're looking, and our donors help us provide that resolution every day.
Oh, I spot on. I've had numerous investigators, people that have been doing this for 20 years, and they say, of all the victims' families, and if it's a homicide victim, obviously it's only the family, but many of them never actually get closure.
Right.
And there's, cold cases especially are kind of it's kind of a double-edged sword, especially they get 15, 20, 40 years old. Most of these family members have completely moved on with their lives. There's one particular case down in the Houston area. I'll just bring this up really quick, and then you can talk a little bit about how Season of Justice was founded. I think that'd be really interesting. But this case, I want to say 39 years old. No. I'm sorry, 43. I'm conflating all these cold cases that we've been working on over the years. But this particular case was a 12-year-old girl that was raped and murdered in 43 years ago. And when the county sheriff's department was finally able to solve that case, all the family had moved away, moved on with their lives, and two of the brothers, one they couldn't even get a hold of, and the second one, when they did get a hold of them, they're just like, "Why are you calling me?" They're like, "You know what? We have moved on. We've forgiven whoever did it. There's nothing we can do to change it." And just carrying that burden, it almost destroyed the entire family, and understandably so. And they're like, frankly, great. You solved the case finally, 43 years later. And, but I think most of society understands that 40 years ago, the technology that we have, the advancements that we have in forensic science, especially with all kinds of evidence, it doesn't matter if it's ballistics or DNA or fingerprinting, crime scene documentation, the different technologies like Faro and things like that can, spin around and it'll give you a 360 degree look at the entire crime scene. It's just unbelievable. Right. Well, I personally tell investigators, especially just with the improvements in the lab technologies, that if you haven't tested, like done DNA testing in the last like 5 years, you should do it again, because the sensitivity of the testing is so much better. And then you add on technologies like MVAC system and stuff like that, then man, it's just game changers. So
it's incredible. I mean, the labs that we work with every day will say the same thing, Jared. They say, if you haven't done it in 5 years, it might be time to do it again. And one of the things that we love about our vendor partners is that they know when to stop. They know what they can do and they know what they can't do. And when you're dealing with cold cases, there's only so much evidence that's left. There's only so much, DNA that's left, or that you don't want to eliminate all of it, because technology 10 years from now might be able to do something. And so one of the things that we're always mindful of is that, is a DNA test going to consume all the DNA, and working with, all the different labs we work with, that's always top of mind. And it's not unusual for them to say, it's not a good time to do this test. Wait 2 years and then come back and see us, and we're thrilled to hear that, because we don't want to consume all that evidence, because we do want to leave that chance for a couple of years down the road, for instance, that way we could find, hopefully get a solve, find that resolution for that family down the road.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting for those of you that don't know, when you're talking specifically about DNA, there's 3 major stages that this DNA needs to go through. The first one is the collection. And I mean, specifically with the MVAC, even with, if somebody had swabbed it, say, even a couple of years ago, a lot of times agencies can go back over that evidence and use the MVAC and still collect plenty of DNA. Well, the second step is the enrichment and, the lab processes it. Let's say that. So lab processing is the second one. And then I'll think about it when I stop thinking about it. It's that gap between the thoughts that
you've just been a little busy as of late. So
yeah,
it's okay.
My brain's a little scattered. I just rolled in last night at 10 o'clock from a big conference, and and then, we also got word that the MVAC helped solve a cold case from way back, where the only thing they had from this Jane Doe was these molds, like from a dentist's office. way long time ago when they used to not be able to take pictures. They had actually have that
Right.
plaster cast that they put in your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's horrible.
It's like they would stuff that huge, almost like a mouth guard, that you would
Yeah.
see, and wasn't formed to your teeth and your mouth, and so it always cut your gums and everything. But it was stacked full of that nasty plaster stuff, and they stick it in there, and then you had to bite down and hold it in there for what seemed like 3 hours,
Oh,
and
forever.
then
Yeah.
it'd like trying to get it off, and it'd stick to your
Well.
teeth. Anyway, had one of those, and they
Yeah.
used the MVAC on it, and they got this lady's DNA from that to help
That's awesome.
identify her. But that's the only thing they had. Is
Yeah.
little sidetrack there, but yeah, crazy what they can do with DNA nowadays. But
It's pretty incredible, and it's growing. It's changing every day. I mean, you've been around it a lot longer than I have, but I'm drinking from a fire hose, and I know there's times when you probably feel the same way, is that technology is advancing so much. I mean, you mentioned MVAC a couple seconds ago. I mean, our number 4 for Season of Justice, our 4th solve, Rita Coran out of Burlington, Vermont, was an MVAC case. We specifically funded MVAC for the police department, and they used the MVAC on a house coat and compared that to DNA that they had from a cigarette butt that was near the victim. And that's how they made the comparison to make the arrest and the confirmation and all that stuff. So, and that was from 1971, so.
Yeah, that's a really cool case. And I actually saw the press conference that the Burlington PD did on that one. And it's, I love reporters. These guys, they, there's nobody that can screw up a story worse than a reporter. And for example, no, I mean, it's cool that they can get DNA off a cigarette butt. And it's also cool that so many bad guys smoke, because they're always leaving their DNA everywhere.
It makes, it makes it easy. It makes
the ones
it
that really don't get it. I've read of, like burglars, they'll break into a house, and after looting the house of whatever they were going to get, they'd open up the refrigerator and take a Coke and a piece of pizza out, and drink part of the Coke, and and then take a couple bites of pizza, and then just leave it on the counter. And the police come in. Like,
hey, our job's done. It's right there.
Look at this genius left us, man.
Yeah.
These guys they'll use the bathroom and then wipe their hands on the towel, or, it's just like, I'm sorry, folks.
Yeah.
When you are sloughing off 400,000 cells a day,
right.
You, everywhere you go, you are leaving your DNA. And when you have sensitivities like what we're talking about, especially with DNA, but even fingerprinting and things like that, like, there's a machine. I saw a presentation at the IAI conference that I was just at, and even if, like, on a shell casing, when you're loading a magazine, you're pushing the bullets into the magazine, you're leaving DNA, and even if that shell casing has been in water, they can now, there's a machine now that can, it's a full system. It's like a little fuming hood, that piece of glass comes down, chunk. It's really cool. It works.
Okay.
And they can get your fingerprint off of that. And so any kind of metal composite, they can get fingerprinting, even if it's been sitting in the water for a long time.
I don't know if it's that same technology, but our board of directors is funding a very similar case, actually next week, that involves the firearm, the magazine, the whole 9 yards, and the belief is that this is going to be a treasure trove here. We just got to get the right science, to test it and all of that stuff. So it should be, pretty cool.
Let's go into the Rita Coran a little bit better. And so it's, this case is actually really interesting. And we've got some more of this kind of information on our website at mvac.com. But the interesting thing is, so Rita Coran I believe she was a school teacher, and she was 24 years old, And there was a guy named William DeRoos, and he lived 2 floors above Rita. And Rita had a couple of roommates, but these roommates went out to a bar or something, and Rita was just getting ready. Well, this guy, this William DeRoos, he saw her through the window getting ready for bed, and she was wearing a robe and everything, and he was arguing with his wife supposedly, and there's all sorts of circumstances that goes into this. But the key is he breaks into her home, molests her, and then and kills her. Well, he was also smoking, and so he left a cigarette butt next to her body, and the initial testing that helped solve the case was they got the DNA off this cigarette butt, but it wasn't a super strong profile. And then inbound with Season of Justice, you guys helped fund the MVAC testing on that robe. And if you look at the strengths of the profile, so to give the listeners a little idea. So if you've ever seen a heart monitor where you got those blips, imagine a heart monitor that's kind of spread out, and it shows 24 heartbeats going at the same time. And out of those heartbeats, somebody has a specific signature that they send out, so that, in say 10 or 12 of those locations, there's a specific heartbeat that goes in each one of those. It's called a loci. And that is how you identify Jared or Brad or anybody else. And each one of us has a specific signature that we send out. Well, that's on they developed that from a specific spot on the DNA strand. And it's just fascinating the way they do that. But when you have what's called a reference sample, which is like somebody can come in and they can take a
swab
Q-tip and do the inside of your mouth is the best place to do it. If you have that, and then you compare it to what they find on the evidence, if it's a 1-to-1, man, it can be like 1 in 20 trillion that it's not, Jared. And and when you get into those kind of specifics, it's like, yeah, we're pretty sure that, that Brad was the bad guy and he was the one out there, raping and murdering all these people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, that's this William DeRoos guy is just not a good character, but he, just a neighbor. And it's amazing how many victims, and it's super sad. I mean, this poor girl, 24 years old, she had her whole life ahead of her. She had no reason to be, there's just no reason. I mean, a second grade teacher, it's like, she wasn't doing it for the money, and she probably just loved kids and loved teaching, and was just trying to get on with her life. And it was that summer that she had moved out of her parents' home the first time, lived with some other roommates. And anyway, taking graduate courses at the University of Vermont, and murdered around midnight on July 19th in 1971. She was found strangled, beaten, and sexually assaulted. And, in a small town back in 1971, I lived there actually in the late 70s. So it would have been, 7 or 8 years after this, but I was just a little kid back then. And but I'm sure just, the repercussions of this just rippled through the entire community and just tore them apart.
Yeah.
Well, it went cold. Back then, they didn't have the technology to solve this, but thank goodness for organizations like you guys and like you said, technology that catches up to it. But they were able to, like you said, that cigarette butt was kind of the initial indicator, but the real nail in a coffin, if you will, was the much stronger profile that they got from the house code. So obviously he had just kind of ripped the house code open and in the process of raping her and strangling her. So fantastic, man. I'm just just what a blessing to have this Season of Justice around that was able to help solve that case.
Yeah. Well, no, that's I stutter because I get choked up just thinking about, each one of these, and they're all just so meaningful, but at the end of the day, it's as you've alluded to a couple times already, Jared, it's our donors that make this possible. We have donors that give to Season of Justice that are around the world. We have, we have donors in Cambodia. We have donors in Denmark. We have donors in Western Europe. And of course across the United States and in Canada and South America and stuff. And it's those individuals that want to see justice, want to help families find this resolution, that we are just, blessed to be trusted by these folks, as that charity of choice, as that trusted charity that, has those proven partnerships, with law enforcement, trusted partnerships with law enforcement, trusted partnerships with labs, so that we can help, again, bridge that financial gap, and help these families right along with, law enforcement and that stuff. And that's another thing, if you don't mind me, I would like to say is that one of the things and why, donating to Season of Justice, is so important is that, our commitment to law enforcement is we're not going to be talking about your case. When an investigative agency comes to Season of Justice to say, hey, we need help. We'd like to, have the MVAC done on this house coat, and, it's going to cost this amount of dollars and we can't afford that. Our commitment to that investigator and to that department, beyond the financial help that we're going to provide, is the fact that, there's going to be an NDA in place, that says Season of Justice, we're not going to talk about the cases that we're involved in. We're not going to go out and advertise. You're not going to see us on social media. We're not going to do those types of things, because the absolute last thing that we want to do as an organization is to mess up an investigation. Provide.
But you're specifically talking about while the investigation is happening.
Yeah.
I mean,
While those,
we're kind of the same way. There's so many agencies use the MVAC.
Uh-huh.
They're like, hey, we're ordering more supplies for obvious reasons.
Right.
Can't tell you why. And we're like, oh,
Right.
you know what? I mean, even if you did tell us why, we couldn't talk about it anyway. And I mean, there was
exactly.
Exactly.
So it's.
Yeah. One of the first cases we helped work in Southern Florida was in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And it took 8 years for that thing to get adjudicated. And so we couldn't really talk about it for 8 years. We kind of knew what had happened,
Mm-hmm.
but and why they had used it.
Right.
And I mean, not the specific results, but I mean, whenever a detective is smiling when you mention a case, that's a good sign.
Right.
And
Right.
the detectives were like, yeah, good things. We're just waiting for it to go to trial. And 8 years.
Right.
I was like,
Right.
oh gosh, really?
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
like one of our, and that was when we were just getting started in forensics. I was like, man, come on, you're killing us. Throw me a bone, man. Well, but they couldn't. They were going to trial, and it was just taking forever. And so, but it finally got adjudicated, and that was actually a brutal murder down in South Florida. And the evidence that they got from it was from a cinder block, basically, and it was it's crazy. So touch DNA from like a cinder block. And anyway, we can talk about that case later. But the bottom line is, you guys, I'm positive you're the trust level between you and your donors and the victims' families and the law enforcement agencies is just rock solid. And it has to be. I mean,
it does. It has to be. It is. We work every day to maintain that on all levels.
Right. So, hey, quick question. Can the donors, I don't know if this is even possible, but if the donors have a specific case in mind, can they donate specifically to that? Or is it just kind of going to a general fund?
No, it goes into a general fund that supports all of our grant making. The vast majority of our grant making goes to our DNA grant programs, but we do also have an awareness campaign grant process that we have, where we work with families, of murdered and missing individuals that, the cases have gone cold, and, again, working alongside and with law enforcement, it's been determined that a media campaign, a billboard, some geo netting, some, Google types of techie types of stuff, maybe newspaper ads, those types of things, a mass media push. It has been determined that it might shed new light. Well, it of course will shed new light on a case, but it may bring, some new leads to an investigation that's gone cold. And so for our donors, basically we're asking them just to give to our general fund. We review cases for the DNA grant program once a month, and our board of directors approves all of those grants. And then we do a one family grant per month where we're working with the family, somewhere here in the United States to help shed new light on their case. And again, as I said, bring awareness, to their situation in coordination with law enforcement.
That's awesome. Yeah. I know a lot of people, especially if it's in their community or a neighbor, or, brother or sister that they know. Sometimes they want to donate to that specific case, but there sometimes, like you mentioned earlier, sometimes you review the case and you're just like, oh, you know what, technology just isn't right for this, and boy, to backtrack onto my previous thought, the third phase of DNA is actually the interpretation. And that's where there's leaps and bounds being made right now with the interpretation of it, because DNA is so complicated, and if you have too many people that have touched the doorknob, for example, and so when you sample that doorknob, you get 10 people. Well, currently you can't do anything with that, but hopefully in the not too distant future there will be technology that they'll be able to kind of unmix that mixture.
Yeah, those mixtures.
People. Yeah. That's mixtures are actually the biggest problem. So, and to give everybody that's listening maybe a little better idea of what a mixture is. So imagine, we'll go back to the heart monitor. Imagine 20 people in a hospital all hooked up to the same heart monitor. And so everybody's heartbeat is being in there and it's all gibbered together. And so, the doctor would look at that and go, I don't know whose heartbeat is whose. And so that's kind of what happens in DNA profiles. And so there are algorithm type of software basically that they can plug the signatures into. And right now, I think the capability is 5 to 7, somewhere around there, that they can kind of separate and look into. But hopefully in the very near future, they're looking at 10, 12, more. So it'll be fantastic.
It's only growing and getting better.
Yeah. That would be the perfect example of, if they said, you know what, we'd love to fund this, but the technology just isn't there right now. So it doesn't mean you shouldn't donate if you can, because everybody definitely needs to. And that's, helping save a child in Alabama or a murder in Oregon, it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, it has to all get done. And to give the folks, and I've said this number quite a few times, there's almost 250,000 cold case homicides. That's just homicides. If you include rapes and assaults and all those kind of, even the major crimes, you're well into the millions of unsolved cases. And ultimately, every single one of those victims deserves justice.
Absolutely.
And anything we can do to solve any of them, then obviously it's kind of our obligation as a society to do that, to do the best we can, at least. So,
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That ethical obligation that we all have, to give back, to help these families find resolution, in any way we possibly can, and Season of Justice is one of those ways. We're a very unique organization as far as I know, sitting here today talking to you. There's not another organization out there like us that has the processes and procedures in place, the relationships with both law enforcement and the forensic science side to really put all of this together, and really drive at scale the type of results and effect that we're having, right now.
Yeah. So talk about really quick the process. So if somebody had a case and they're like just languishing with it, they're like, man, if we had the funding, this is what we'd do.
Absolutely.
How do they do that?
It's real easy. Go to seasonofjustice.org, and at the top of the web page, you're going to see a tab that says applications. Click on applications, then click on DNA grant applications. We'll talk about the DNA grant, which is for investigative agencies right now. Our grant application was designed by a retired homicide detective for homicide detectives. It is a grant application, but it is about the easiest grant application you're ever going to see in your life. It's easier than filling out a credit card application. The vast majority, 99% of the information that we're asking for, you either have top of mind because you're working the case so hard, or it's in your case file and it's a real quick, cut and paste type of situation. To that end, we are not looking for a whole lot of detail, to be totally honest with you. We realize that details, are important to investigators, and, preserving and maintaining those details in secret can help solve cases. So we're not going to be asking for detailed synopsis or summaries of the case itself. What we're looking for, is information about the case, information about the technology that you're looking to take advantage of to help advance the case, technology that can help with that lead generation, for the investigation. And then after that, we ask that you submit your grant application with a vendor lab quote. Most detectives are working with labs anyway, on a number of different cases. We ask that you go through one of the pretty easy, case reviews with your chosen lab of choice. Season of Justice does not choose the lab for the investigative agency. That's on the detective or the department to make that decision. We ask that you go through that case review process with the lab, and then accompany the grant application, or accompanying the grant application will be that vendor quote that has the testing plan in there that outlines, hey, we're going to do this, this, and this. We want MVAC because here's what we're going to go after, So we can see what a financial commitment might be. Is it going to be a $1,000 case or a $15,000 case, that type of thing. With both of those items, the grant application, that's really easy. I can't say that enough times. In the vendor quote that the lab is going to send you, you submit that via email to us, or you can do all of this online at seasonofjustice.com or seasonofjustice.org. And then usually our turnaround time is anywhere from 60 to 90 days. So we are actively looking at these cases. Our staff is actively looking at these cases when they come in every single day. We have an advisory board member that works directly with our staff. They go through, they vet the cases, they make sure that they're in line, kind of the ducks are in a row. And then as long as it meets our criteria, as long as the ducks are in a row, there's a really good chance that your case is going to go in front of the board within 30 to 60 days, for grant funding for consideration. To that end, one of our most recent solves down in another Burlington, Kentucky, just south of Cincinnati. I think the detective down there told me that the turnaround time was, right at 62 days from the moment he made application to us. 62 days later, he was, working directly with the lab to get what they needed.
Wow, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome stuff. And like I said, you've funded 150 plus cases, over $1 million submitted. I mean, all of this forensic stuff, and it doesn't matter if it's DNA or fingerprinting. It's
Right.
DNA especially is really expensive, and it's just the nature of the beast. I mean,
Yeah.
that lab equipment alone, you easily up in the millions of dollars. So it's but to even run the machines, sometimes it's like $1,500 a cartridge, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's
Unbelievable.
So, but that's what you got to do in order to solve a case. Then it's not that much, really. It's
right.
It's interesting. There were some stats. We had some research. This is a number of years ago, but it included FBI stats and all this other things. And every time a department has to reopen a cold case, it's between the police overtime and testing and all this stuff. It averages about $35,000 per case.
Oh, wow.
So every time they pull that off the shelf. So a lot of times, they have to they may be aware of it, but it just sits
Right.
there until they know something is different. And I know that may not be the answer that the families want to hear, but unless something changes, nothing changes, and there's no point
Right.
in just looking at it for the sake of looking at it. Now, sometimes there's a new cold case squad is is formed, but for them to try to reopen, especially if they're in a larger agency, geez, I mean, they may have 500 cold cases. It's crazy how many of these cases they just run out of leads. There's just nothing else that they can do until a new technology or something comes along. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Well, Brad, it's just it's fantastic. I was really excited to have you on because I hope
Thank you.
everybody listening to this goes to seasonofjustice.org and checks out their website. And hopefully you guys can donate whatever you can to this organization, because it's one of the good ones. And it's a huge need out there. There are agencies all over the country. And if you're an investigator and you're listening to this and you have been like turned down by the lab, you have evidence that if you submit it, you're just really confident you'll get something off of it. And for one reason or another, you just haven't been able to do it, then what do you have to lose to contact? First of all, every lab that I know, every private lab that I know of will do a free consult.
Exactly.
They don't charge you to look at the case file.
Right.
So utilize that. It's free. Have another set of eyes look at it, and then you can get a quote from them and then submit it to Season of Justice. And it sounds like a pretty simple process. And, roll the dice, man. But the worst thing you can do is do nothing. And I think it's so interesting with so many things happening in life right now. And between, just everything. If you just look at society in general, the time to sit on the fence is over. People have to step up. And, I know everybody's life is busy. I know everybody's like, man, I just can't take on anything else. But you know what? There's a saying that happened a long time ago that it just says, in order for evil to succeed, all good men, all that has to happen is good men to do nothing. And good men and women should be included in there. So if you are listening to this, then more than likely you're an amazing person, because you're an all things crime fan.
Absolutely.
And so, get up and do something. And you know what? Going to seasonofjustice.org and donating is one of the best. So, Brad, any last thoughts?
No, just our appreciation, Jared, for give us an opportunity to talk about what we do and who we support and all of those things. And please do reach out to us via the webpage. There's a contact us page there. We've got a really quick turnaround on not only getting back to you to talk about your case, but also those full grant applications with quotes, turning those around too. Because at the end of the day, we're here to help law enforcement. We're here to bridge that gap. We're here to help families, and for all of us to find that resolution for those cold cases that have been out there needing this advanced technology that we now have access to, that we didn't even 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, again, what we talked about earlier with Rita Curran, I guarantee her family was really, really suffering. And frankly, I guarantee the entire community of Burlington, Vermont was, every time they thought about that cold case just hanging over their heads, it had to be just painful. And so that right there is the perfect example of what can happen just with good people's money and by donations, and fund a case like that may have otherwise never been solved. Bam.
Absolutely.
You've got a success story. So fantastic stuff, Brad. Appreciate you, man. We'll, I'm sure we'll be seeing you at a conference here before too long.
I'll see you out there on the road.
Absolutely. So you guys keep doing the best fight, and definitely tell all of your donors and, the founders and everybody how much we appreciate everything that they do, because good people like that are the reason that stuff's getting done. Even if
Absolutely.
they don't want their
I will.
name out there, they're still just doing amazing things. So
Absolutely.
awesome
I'll pass
stuff,
it along.
man. Okay, buddy.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.